when it comes to the best exercises for core training, what we've got to do is we've got to stop talking about muscles and we've got to start talking about the core as a whole. So how the core doesn't work is individual muscles. And obviously when we talk about core exercises, a lot of the exercises try and focus on individual muscles, but this isn't how the core works. So what we have to do is we have to get away from bodybuilding style, or not bodybuilding style training, but the philosophy that it uses that is individual muscles, and selecting exercises based on those individual muscles. Because this comes from a reductionist perspective, which is basically break the body down into its component parts, into the different muscles, and then we train each of those different muscles individually. What that unfortunately does is misperceived, because most people think if I do some sit-ups like this, or if I do some side bends like this, or some twists like this, then I'm going to be working all the different muscles of my core, and therefore my core is going to be strong. That is an assumption. The core works best when all muscles are being knitted together and used properly. So what we're going to do in part number 2 is talk about how the core works properly and the exercises that make that happen. So how does the core work? Well, number 1, it's all muscles together. So what we've got to do is we've got to start choosing exercises that make that happen. So as a more advanced exercise, if I grab a kettlebell, I'll give you an example. So I start passing it around and then I come up and I catch it at the top. Now when I catch it at the top, what I feel are all my core, my brace, my abdominals, my obliques, they all start working. Plus you've got deltoid pecs, so on and so forth. You've got the arm muscles. So we get more muscles working together as we pass it round and catch it at the top and pass it back down. So number 1, all the muscles work together. Number 2 is it needs to be balanced. So when we talk about the core as a whole, what we need to be able to do is balance the sides of the core, if you will. So I talk a lot about anterior, lateral, posterior. So what we need to do is get all of those balanced and all of those working together. So what does that do when it comes to exercise? What does that look like? Well, there needs to be a degree of movement. Now I can do that with the kettlebell again, but what I'm going to do is a slightly different example because it's a little bit more obvious. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a plank and I'm going to move up into a side plank. So when you come down into a plank, you get the anterior musculature and all the other tissues that are there, the fascia, the tendons, so on and so forth. So it all starts working down in this area. What we then do is we lift an arm up and you'll feel it move to one side. When we lift an arm up and then we roll round, we then feel it on the side and less on the front. So when we add movement into the exercise, you start to feel the load spread around. And that's another important part of choosing exercises, is we may need to choose a static plank to start with and a static side plank to start with, because what we may find through an assessment process is that the anterior posture is a lot stronger than the lateral posture. So we need to build the lateral posture up to somewhat match the anterior posture so we can then start going through the movement, because there's no point in going from here to here and then sort of crumbling when we get to here. So we need to build up the lateral aspects of the torso. So not only do we need to get them working together, as I described in part number 1, but we need to get them balanced as well. The third thing is that the core muscles mostly work unconsciously, or at least that's where we want to get them. Now, if we start talking about the very deep muscles, so you've got the individual segments of the spine, so the vertebra, and the muscles that go between them, they stabilize those segments, and those segments are stabilized unconsciously. I can't control when my multifidus or when these deep rotating muscles engage. That's generally taken care of with regards to it being an unconscious process. When it comes on to abs and obliques, that's a little bit more of a conscious process. I can tense that, and then the obliques tense along with the abdominals. So what we can do is we need to be able to take it to that unconscious level. So again, if we're using the plank, we can do that to start with. So we can come down into a plank and we can engage and hold. I can feel that, and then I can loosen it off a bit if I want to, and I can tighten it back up again. So we've got that unconscious and conscious thing, but what we want to be able to do is when we go into a plank, we just want it to be unconscious. It all just tightens up, our abs go, and we're all good. Because when we come onto here, we don't really want to be thinking, right, I need to contract, I need to relax, I need to contract, I need to relax. What we need to be able to do is just move the weight, and the muscles take care of the engagement. So it's just an unconscious process. As the weight moves around and I catch it, the muscles engage, And the more I can hone and tune that process, the better it's going to be for my spine. Number 4 is that the muscles of the spine, the muscles of the core are there to hold the spine. So when we think about the spine, we've got to think about it like a mast or a tent with guy wires, or a mast on a yacht with the wires that come down that attach onto the pelvis, and then essentially they anchor the spine to the pelvis. So when we're selecting exercises, what we want to be able to do is maintain posture of the spine. So for example, if I again use this sort of round the world and catch type exercise, I'm maintaining the posture of the spine, like so. I can feel the muscles working, I can feel it moving around the torso. Now this I wouldn't give to beginners, because they won't have the competency to do it and the capacity to do it, and the sort of the mental skill to be able to get the muscles engaging when they want to be engaged. You need to build up to this type of process, but it is an exercise that sort of fits with how the anatomy is built. So one of the exercises that we can choose, again, is just going down into a plank and a side plank. Again, holding when we get down there, holding the position and getting all the muscles to fire and maintain that position of the spine. Then we need to start introducing some movement into it. Now again, you could use the catching one, but what I'll do here is I'll just pass it around. So again, what I'm not doing is moving the spine, I'm holding the body solid, the muscles are engaged, and all I can feel is around here is working, but my spine is staying, which is basically telling me that the muscles are anchoring my spine to my pelvis, where it's then able to be, or the load is then able to be distributed evenly around all of these tissues, rather than being focused on specific tissues, which is eventually going to end in a problem. The core is also a platform for the legs and for the arms. Now what that means is that they are a stable, or the core is a stable platform for the arms and legs to generate force, power, speed. Now what that can look like is, again, if we use a kettlebell, but this time I'm going to use a lift. Now it's only 16 kilos, but let's just imagine it's a lot heavier. So what could happen is I could come down and lift this, and then I get down into this position, and then I start lifting. So what's happening is my spine is breaking, or the posture of my spine is breaking, before I do the lift. And then I'm sort of working my way through the lift. What we really need to be able to do, which is how the platform comes in, is we need to get the glutes engaged and the spine solid. So when I come down and lift, my spine stays in position. So my glutes can do their job, which is basically extend my hip and sort of make my body come upright. So that is how we sort of create that platform for the hips and for the legs. So it's having a spine that can lift as much weight as your arms and legs. Because what generally happens is arms and legs get very strong, and then the spine doesn't keep up with it. And then what starts to happen is posture then begins to break, which again can end in problems. Your core isn't as strong as you think it is, although your arms and legs are lifting a lot of weight. And then the final one, number 6, is the core also acts not only as a platform, but as a spring as well. So what we then need to start doing is not only have the ability to hold that posture, but the ability to create energy, elastic energy, through recoiling. And what that basically means, if I go back to the exercise I was using at the start, there is the nature of it springing. So I come around like so and up. So again, I've got that little spring to it. You can see my body just flicks as it comes around, And what my body needs to be able to do, or my torso or my core needs to be able to do, is guide that weight up, but it just uses those little sort of kicks of energy, and then it elongates and springs it, elongates, springs it, elongates, springs it. So we need to be able to use exercise in that way. So if you want to build core strength and stability in this way, click the link below, go through to my How to Build Core Strength and Stability online program. It's a 12-week beginner's program. It will build you up all the way through the first 12 weeks into an intermediate and advanced workouts, which include more of the springing and faster type exercises using different bits of equipment. The first 12 weeks is body weight, and it starts simple, builds up more complex, much harder, into the intermediate and advanced when you're ready to get there. If you've liked this content, you found it useful, please do hit the like button below. It will help me with the algorithm, and hit the subscribe button. You'll be notified when I release more tutorials. And finally, any questions, any comments about anything that I've said in today's tutorial, please leave them below. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris. Speak to you in the next tutorial.